Thank you for that introduction. What I'm going to be reading tonight is from If Life is a Bowl of Cherries, What Am I Doing in the Pits by Irma Bombeck, one of my favorite writers. And this selection's from If You Thought the Wedding Was Bad, which is a chapter about her relationships with her husband. And the selection that I'm reading is going to be husbands and their fear of nails. I don't know what there is about a nail in the wall that makes strong, virile men cry. The first time I was aware of this phenomenon was a week after my husband and I were married. I passed him in the kitchen one day while carrying a small nail and hammer. "Where are you going with that hammer and nail?" he asked, beginning to pale. "I'm going to hang up a towel rack," I said. He could not have looked more shocked if I had said I was going to drive a wooden peg into the heart of a vampire. "Do you have to drive that spike into the wall to do it?" "No," I said, resting on the sink. "I could prop the towel rack up in a corner on the floor. I could hang it around my waist from a rope, or I could do away with it altogether and keep a furry dog around the sink to dry my hands on. What is there about women that they cannot stand to see a smooth, bare wall?" he grumbled. "And what is there about men that they cannot stand to have the necessities of life hung from a wall?" "What necessities?" he asked. "Certainly you don't need that mirror in the hallway." "You said that about the light switches." His eyes narrowed, and I had the feeling he was going to zap me with his big point. "Do you realize," he asked slowly, "that there is not one single wall in this house where we can show a home movie?" "Radio City Music Hall only has one," I retorted. "And so, the nail versus the bare wall has gone on for years at our house. He wouldn't hang a calendar over my desk because in 12 months the nail would become obsolete. He wouldn't hang the children's baby pictures because in 2 years they'd grow teeth and no one would recognize them. He wouldn't let me put a hook in the bathroom so I wouldn't have to hold my robe while I showered. He wouldn't let me hang a kitchen clock anywhere but on a wall stud, which happened to be located behind the refrigerator. Sometimes you have to wait for revenge. Yesterday he reported he ran over a nail with his car. There's an object lesson here, but I wouldn't insult anyone's intelligence by explaining it. Our next I work for 4 part-time jobs, one of them in retail, and it seems like on an almost daily basis I have customers complaining about prices. And sometimes, depending on my mood, I say, well, think about how much you would pay if this were made in the United States of America, not by someone in China making maybe 70 cents an hour. So with this particular job, to keep from being super bored, sometimes I come up with story ideas, and this particular story called House of Horrors was inspired by someone who was looking for inexpensive decor for their lake house. And I got to thinking about it and thinking, how far would someone go in order to get their dream house, and it just kind of went from there. Cindy and Craig Blakesley hadn't saved enough money. Nearing retirement age, they had hopes to build their dream house. They wanted a quiet place out in the country, but it looked like it wouldn't happen. Then they were invited to a housewarming party. Cindy and Craig went. There was a mixture of awe and jealousy. They had done the best they could financially, scraping by through Cindy's cancer and Greg's heart attack. They longed for a place where they could have their grandchildren gather on weekends and holidays. The memories of their past illnesses were never far from their minds. Would they live long enough to see their dream house? But the acquaintance was going on and on about the builder. Martinelli and Associates gave them such a discount, it was unbelievable. The Blakesleys wondered if their dream house was within reach. Patsy Quinn, the acquaintance, seemed a little wired when she talked about the home, but willingly gave them a phone number to call. "Please get in contact with them," she said. Over the course of several weeks, Patsy kept calling Cindy to see if she'd called the builder. Finally, To appease her, Cindy called the number. Arturo Art Martinelli was glad to meet with the Blakesleys and talk about their plans. Months later, Cindy and Craig couldn't quite believe it. The dream house was underway. They had budgeted $300,000 for the house and lot. They were able to get it for $150,000, an astonishing amount. However, they noticed something a bit odd. They were not allowed on the property unless they called ahead of time. A large, almost tent-like barrier surrounded the house. Even stranger, when they walked through the house, all the workers were gone. Once, when Craig had driven out there unannounced, he was turned away. But other than that, he had no real complaints. They were getting their dream house for a bargain. When the house was completed, the builder sat them down for a little video. Shot while the house was being built, it showed things which horrified Cindy and Craig. In the video was footage of Chinese factory workers making the drywall, the plywood, and everything in the house. The factory was a horror. Some of them were being beaten, as well as the construction workers building the house. Illegal. Every single last one of them, said Art. I pay them less than minimum wage. That's how we can keep the cost of construction down. Horrified, the Blakeleys realized their house was constructed by miserable people no better than slaves. They also understood if they uttered a word to the authorities, they would be dead. Mr. Martinelli calmly reminded them they wanted a dream house and didn't seem to care how they got it. Please refer me, he said as he gave them some of his cards. Cindy thought of Patsy and how eager she was for her to get in contact with Martinelli and Associates. How could you? She said in a frantic phone call to Patsy after Martinelli had left. I had to, or else he'd kill me. It didn't matter if he didn't work with them, he just wanted people to call. He said he'd do the rest. Sick with guilt, Cindy and Craig had their children and grandchildren over for Thanksgiving, their first one in the new house. Pulling her daughter-in-law aside, she gave her one of Martinelli's cards. Please give him a call, she said. You won't believe how much you'll save, she said, her smile not quite reaching her